Thank you for having me back. It's great to be back on the air with you. I was laughing at your last segment about the guy that wanted to drink beer for Lent. I'm not sure that's really the Lenten spirit and sacrifice. But look, you're asking a very serious topic. I think President Biden's got this exactly wrong. He wants open borders and closed schools. We need closed borders and open schools. Here's the irony. You've got both parents and students want to go back to schools, but the teacher unions want them closed. The CDC feels strongly both ways. And as a candidate, Biden promised he was going to follow the science. He promised he was going to reopen the schools within his first 100 days, and he's not doing either. He's really become a science denier, and he's deferring to the teachers' unions. They've been all over the map on this. First they said they were going to open the schools in the first 100 days. Then they said it was only K-8 schools. Then they said only 1 day a week. Then it was 5 days a week. Then they said, everybody's been going back and forth. The Democrats, the unions are saying every teacher has to be vaccinated. Then they've backed off of that. So a lot of confusion coming out of the federal government. Private schools, parochial schools are leading the way, allowing their students to come back in a safe way into the classroom. And Joe, let's not lose sight. Who's really hurting here are the students. What we're really seeing is especially poorer students, so minority students. They're the ones that are falling behind. They're the ones that are losing access to not only education, but other services as well. So because of political correctness, because of the teacher unions, we see the Biden administration actually hurting the kids they claim they want to protect, they claim they want to help. I think it's ridiculous. I think we can reopen schools in a safe way, and we should be reopening schools in a safe way.
Now, I think to that point, we already had this widening educational gap that's only getting worse now with this virtual learning that's clearly not teaching our children what they need to know. But pivoting a little bit, staying with that similar vein of COVID, our opening, we talked about the death of accountability in America. In New York, we see that with Governor Cuomo getting hammered for this ridiculous policy that ushered in sick patients through the back door into nursing home facilities housing our most vulnerable. Where did he go wrong here, and how do we get people to understand intuitively just how much power rests with a governor over the living and dying of people in times like this?
Joe, two things. First of all, look, the media a year ago appointed Cuomo the savior. He was their political hero. They used him to beat up Trump, and they were just waiting for Florida and the other red states to fail. They couldn't tell us more. They couldn't tell us quickly enough how badly DeSantis was doing and other red state governors were doing, whereas the red state governors, especially DeSantis in Florida and others like him, Abbott in Texas, others like him, were pursuing common sense approaches, letting people make their own decisions, giving them information, not killing small businesses. What we found is that they actually had better results. And in New York, where they were trying to kill their economy and they had this top-down approach, they didn't have as good results, and the media is not telling the story. To your specific question, look, I think this is just atrocious. You had Cuomo with this awful policy, forcing these patients into nursing homes at a time when they had spare hospital bed capacity thanks to the federal efforts. You had Trump sending up the hospital ship up there. You had him, FEMA standing up temporary hospital beds that weren't being utilized. And instead, Cuomo, by executive order, forced these patients who turned out to be infectious into nursing homes, causing unnecessary spread of this virus. And tragically, it has led to people's deaths. And then to compound this error, there was this cover-up. Now we found out that they weren't honest with the numbers. And somehow it's all Trump's fault. Here's the amazing thing. Cuomo, as he finally revealed what he did, and he started yelling at state legislators, try to blame Trump for this. And the media is not covering this story. And so, look, I think what we can see and learn from this is you need more transparency in state government. Governors need to be honest with their voters, their constituents, give them the information, let them make informed decisions. Don't try to control their lives. Right. Look, I'm a federalist. I really do believe that states should have more authority, not the federal government, not the centralized government. But that only works if you have state leaders that are willing to be honest and open with their people and not to control their lives and not to act arrogantly as if they know best and they know better how to lead everybody's lives for them.
Now, to that point, I'm reminded of the fact that the word statesman comes from an Italian word, statista, which literally means to keep track, right? That's your first and foremost responsibility in government. We're looking down in the southern state, the state of Texas, massive crisis down there dealing with the weather. And while everyone talks about the wind and how much renewable energy we should is responsible, at the end of the day, nuclear energy plants need water. The same way that you have the pipelines for natural gas that need to actually be able to make sure they don't freeze and burst. So how do we get people to focus on the hard truth that we can hate the Green New Deal, we can know that it's preposterous, that we don't have to stop eating hamburgers to save the world, but at the same time, what happened in Texas was a lack of foresight from the people that we elect to make sure that days like that, no matter how infrequent they happen, never happen.
Yeah, so look, a couple of things. First of all, our thoughts and prayers go out to our neighbors in Texas. I know how miserable it is. I was governor of a state in 2008, back when Gustav and Ike came through Louisiana. Those hurricanes knocked out electricity for many people for several days, many cases for weeks. And that's a really tough situation. It really, your water systems are vulnerable. Your hospitals are vulnerable. So first of all, we certainly empathize in anything we can do to help those folks that are struggling without water, without heat. It is really life-threatening, and it is a really tough situation. In terms of the lessons learned, look, Joe, you're exactly right. First of all, I think, and I commend Governor Abbott and others who are saying they're going to get to the bottom of this, find out where their transmission, not-for-profit, the corporation in Texas, wasn't better prepared. They're going to make those changes. But I think going out of this, we're going to have to weatherize the plants. We're going to have to strengthen our transmission lines. One of the things we found out is you need abundant natural gas, not only as a power source, but also to heat people's homes, and they had trouble getting enough natural gas. And instead of pointing fingers, let's figure out how to prevent this from happening in the future. But I think it also shows this danger. There's this political, in D.C., the Democrats want to electrify the entire economy, make everybody abandon oil and gas-driven cars,
right,
abandon oil and gas as a fuel. And the reality is our grid's not ready for that. Our electric systems aren't ready for that. And it's just they've got these magical solutions where they think they can snap their fingers and just stop oil and gas drilling, stop oil and gas consumption. That's not realistic. We need an all-of-the-above energy strategy. That includes wind, that includes solar, but it also includes nuclear. It also includes oil and gas. What we saw in Texas is you need baseload generation. You need enough stable swing capacity. And so we're not going to get rid of oil and gas overnight. And I think we need to be honest with the American people about that. That's an essential part of the American economy. Those are good-paying jobs. I thought it was ridiculous when John Kerry told all these oil and gas workers, give up your good-paying jobs, go become solar panel installers. I thought that was not only arrogant, but it just showed what was wrong with this whole approach, the Green New Deal and the other approach. But going back to Texas, I think there are going to be some lessons learned here. We got to be better prepared next time. In the meantime, instead of just pointing fingers, let's do what we can to help these folks get their lives back together, get the heat turned back on, and get the water turned back on.
All right, I got about 30 seconds here, but some people don't know you're a member of Congress, also a governor of a state. You've run for president. We used to believe all politics is local. Talk to us about the dangers of us having this kind of one-size-fits-all in our politics. You want a one-size-fits-all minimum wage. You want to have a one-size-fits-all party. Talk to us about getting back to core issues of local governance and constituent responsibility.
Look, I still believe in the 10th Amendment. I think what works in Louisiana may not be the right solution for New York or California, and that's the beauty of the American system. The Democrats like to ignore the states being the laboratories of democracy. They like to ignore the local government in favor of the centralized government. That doesn't work. We don't need one-size-fits-all solutions on education, on health care. I believe in school choice, for example. We were talking about school closures, empower parents and students to make the best choices for them.
Exactly.
Why does D.C. have to dictate from the top, from D.C.? Those D.C. bureaucrats don't know those kids better than their parents, and that applies to healthcare. That applies to many other areas of our lives as well. At the end of the day, it really comes down to whether you trust the American people. I trust the American people more than I trust these unelected bureaucrats in D.C. That's the essential debate we've been having for decades in this country. We'll continue to have that decade. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in the American